Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our midweek Bible study period. Those of you who are viewing online, we appreciate your being with us as well, and all of you who are here in the auditorium. We appreciate very much your presence. We have several people who are out of town and away from us. Saw a couple a little while ago that had been to the mountains, and they said just as they were leaving, they were just getting back in town. And just as they were leaving Gatlinburg, they ran into another family from the congregation here that were just coming in up there. So we're going and coming. New bulletins are available out in the foyer, and to be sure to pick one up, and Michael will be mentioning that later, but I want our people at home to be aware of it, and to, if they come by the building, or if you come by the building this week to pick up communion supplies or whatever, be sure to pick up a bulletin. And we have new spiritual swords available, just came in today. And this is a card that Michael will read later too, and I'll probably read it Sunday morning. But this is from Jerry and Mary Phillips saying, dear children's class, we want to thank you for the surprise visit last Sunday and also the autumn wreath you made is so pretty. And the poster that spelled out "We love you" was very special. We love you too. Signed, Jerry and Mary Phillips. So we appreciate those who do these special little things, and we want to remember Sister Linda Cook, Faye Mayberry, Lola King, and any others that of our number. Barbara has had one eye operated on, and I've been helping her to put drops in her eyes some of the time. She does it some of the time, but her doctor gave her a good report this morning, and we thank all of you for thinking about her and being concerned about her. She's going to be okay, and she may see things that she hasn't seen in a long time when this is over, and we'll be thankful for that. All right, John chapter 2 is the location of our study tonight. The beginning of the miracles that Jesus did was turning the water to wine at the wedding feast in Cana of Galilee. We talked about some of the customs of that day and some of the things that were going on at the wedding and so on. And Jesus, of course, said to his mother when she told him that there was no wine, and said, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" And we pointed out that and learned that that was not a statement of disrespect. Some people have said that, but we know that Jesus would not be disrespectful to his mother, and he is our example in all things, and we should remember that he cared for her almost with his dying breath and took care of her needs at that time. But we wanted to talk about the firkin for a moment. It was a unit of measurement, and it is said that the water pots contained so many firkins each, and there were 6 of them. And notice that they must have been different sizes, because he said they would hold 2 to 3 firkins each. And so they were not all the same size. So depended on whether it was 2 gallons or 3 gallons or 2.5 and 3.5, whatever, it was about that much per container. You're talking about each one holding several gallons, like 18 to 25 gallons, something like that. So they were filled to the brim, and that was a whole lot of water, and then the water was turned to wine. Now here's the question that I didn't get to last week and I want to talk a little bit about tonight. And that is the question that's always raised: was the wine intoxicating wine? Well, if it was, there was a lot of wine being drunk at that wedding. Mentioning weddings, I meant to tell you, be sure to say a prayer Saturday for Alex and Alan, especially for Alex. No, they're going to get married, and we want to all wish them the very best. And I was thinking today, I'm going to pray for good weather too. It's supposed to be an outdoor wedding, and we're excited for them and for their life together. But wedding customs are different in our land than they were in the time of Jesus. But this question is always raised, and there are people who say that it was not. There are people who say that it was. There are people who say we don't know. But let's think about some things. It's not logical to assume that Jesus, his mother, and his disciples would be part of or parties to a drunken brawl. Sometimes there's people who take that statement when they have well drunk, that they look at that statement and they think, well, that's saying that after they become so intoxicated, they can't determine the good wine and the bad wine. But I don't think that's at all what is being said. There's some other things that need to be considered. Oinos is the Greek term, and when that word is used and the corresponding Hebrew word, it simply means the juice of the grape, or the liquid that comes from grapes. That's all that it means. Now, it may, in certain contexts, clearly refer to intoxicating wine. But in many passages, it simply refers to something that is required just like food is. It brings nutrition to the body. It's a liquid that will give us strength or whatever. Sometimes some types of wine are said to be a blessing, while others clearly are pictured as being curses. So you need to take the context of the passage. But that word itself does not denote or indicate the content of alcohol that is in the liquid that is being considered. It's used of grape juice. It's also used of fermented wine. But some that is fermented, of course, that's done for the purpose of preservation. But I was told by a man many years ago, who was a lot older than I was, that the process of fermentation could be stopped at any time by boiling. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not up on cooking. I know Mama made grape juice for many, many years, and we never had any that fermented, and she would can it, and we would drink it that winter, and maybe even the next spring. And I really liked it. My aunt and uncle had a huge grapevine all the way out the garden fence, and they had a long garden. But that grapevine ran the length of that fence. And you could go out there, and I mean, they had all kinds of grapes. And we went to their house one winter night, and that's what she served us. She had some cake or something, and she had some canned grape juice that she had kept in the refrigerator, and man, it was good and cold. And those were some of the best refreshments I ever remember eating growing up, or since, for that matter. But she preserved it, and it was not fermented. Now, occasionally, a seal will break, and it will get tangy, you know. And even some of the people from whom I read said that you would have the fresh juice of the grape, and then if it is stored for a while, it may become tangy where you just don't want to drink it. And then the next stage is fermentation, where it does become intoxicating if you drink it. But most of the wine in that day, even if it was fermented, was very low in alcoholic content because it was, quote, watered down. It was mixed with water before partaking of it. Now, the Scriptures so far as I know, are always restrictive concerning intoxicating liquors. And there is a difference between wine and strong drink, for example. You'll read that term on several occasions. And the question that I have always asked is, would the Lord endorse by his action that which is forbidden by deity elsewhere? I just can't bring myself to believe that Jesus would go contrary to all of those passages in the Scriptures that talk about the evils of strong drink. Now, there are several passages that are mentioned, and I want us just to go to some of those and look at them, if you would, for a moment. Leviticus chapter 10. Leviticus chapter 10 is the story of Nadab and Abihu. I remember the first time I ever heard a preacher make this point about Nadab and Abihu. He was discussing the matter of alcohol. And we all know that Nadab and Abihu were destroyed, killed, because they offered strange fire. But when you read that context and you come down to verse 7, I believe it is. No, that's not the verse I'm looking for. Verse 9. Verse 9. Nadab and Abihu have been slain, and the Lord begins to talk to Aaron, their father. And he says to him in verse 9, "Do not drink wine nor strong drink, you or your sons with you, when you go into the tabernacle of the congregation, lest you die." Now, I believe it was E.C. Meadows that I heard for the first time I ever heard this point made. E.C. pointed out, it's almost as if strong drink was involved in the actions of Nadab and Abihu. That may have been involved in their flagrant disregard to what God had said about the fire. And we see in that, if that's the case, the fact that alcohol does offer our thought patterns. And it just alters the way we think. There's a man that I know quite well, known him for a long time. But his demeanor and actions will change with just a little bit of alcohol in his system. And over the years, I have learned that you can't joke with him when he's like that, because he becomes quite defensive. I mean, real easily, So you just don't say anything if you meet him out somewhere. And we have all seen that. And I've known many, many situations, and I'm sure you do too. Well, that's one passage that shows us that the priests were not to be involved with alcohol, that it would be something that God just would not accept. Now, we are what? What are we today as Christians? We're priests. We're all priests if we're Christians, and Jesus is our high priest. So it's not likely, in my thinking, that Jesus would go contrary to that principle that was set up for the high priest and the priests back under the law of Moses. That's one passage. Look at Proverbs chapter 20. Most of you are very familiar with this. The very first verse says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Wine is a mocker. It will make a mockery of you. It'll cause you to do things and behave in ways that you just normally wouldn't do. And we're all aware of that. You know, we can hide our heads in the sands, or we can try to sweep it under the carpet. But the truth of the matter is that alcohol is still the number one drug problem in America. Now, you can talk about all the other drugs, and there's lots of them that do a lot of damage. But statistically, and in reference to the damage done and so on, health issues, murders, alcohol's involved in a lot of murders, abuse, just one thing after another. It is a mocker. It makes a fool of us. You know, we used to talk about people acting a fool. Most people who get a little alcohol in them, they start acting a fool. And I knew a man who, if he had something to drink, he thought he could whip anybody around. And he got fooled most of the time. Wine is a mocker. Strong drink is raging. People, you know, get alcohol in them, and they will get so angry and just fly into a wild rage. And the brawling and the revelry, all that in the Bible, all that goes together. Drunkenness, revelry, brawling, it'll all be mentioned sometimes in the same context, because it all goes together. Strong drink is raging, and whoever is deceived thereby is not wise. What are some of the deceptions of alcohol? Number one, you need it in order to be happy. It'll make you happy. If you want to be happy, you need to drink. Another one is, you need me to be healthy. And there's even people who quote the Bible about that. You know, Paul told Timothy, drink a little wine for your stomach's sake and for your often infirmities. And they'll try to use that as to condone social drinking. I've reminded one or two over the years, now wait a minute, let's look at that passage. Are you sure you want to argue about the correctness of taking alcohol on the basis of that passage? Well, that's what it says. I said, okay, let's look at it. Drink no longer water. You still drink water? Well, yeah. Well, you're not obeying that passage. It says drink no longer water, but take a little wine. How much do you drink? Oh, I can drink a carton of beer in a day. Is that a little? Sounds like a whole lot to me. Drink a little wine for your stomach's sake. Do you have a stomach problem? Well, no, I got an iron stomach. You don't need to apply this passage to that.
People seeking justification where they they want to drink, but why don't they just say they want to drink? Why they got to have proof or something? Yeah. Like you said, more sociable.
Right.
Can handle decisions better. I love that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's every excuse under the sun for that. I've always, I guess you'll never know, but when, of course, the Lord can make any kind of wine He wants.
Yeah.
I always thought that and this is an opinion of it, but new wine was not fermented. It had just come from the press. And they would put it in the skins and everything, but that was to preserve it, but it also, over the year, because you only harvested in the fall. And so over the year, it would slowly gain a little alcohol content just naturally. But the new wine was, you could only have it one time a year. And I always kind of thought that would be something that was rare to them. That the new wine, and it's, you know, it's kind of like grape juice, and I would imagine it would taste a lot better. But Jesus could have made the best wine in the world with zero alcohol content. Could make it taste like old wine. I mean, you know,
That's exactly right.
He's not held to the confines of the world.
That's true. Any other comments?
Some feel that they can't have a good time without it.
I'm sorry.
Some feel like they can't have a good time socially without it.
That's right. That's right. That's another deception. I have to be accepted. And people won't accept me if I don't drink. Well, that's not true. I mean, there may be some people that won't, but some of those people you wouldn't want to be socially accepted by. I remember Brother Ira North talking about going to a yacht. He had never been on a yacht. And he was conducting a meeting somewhere, and this fellow said, "You've never been on a yacht?" And he said, "No, I haven't." He said, "Well, Brother so-and-so's down, or Mr. so-and-so's down there, and we're good friends." And said, "I'll take you down here and let you see his yacht." And Brother Norris said the very first thing that the yacht owner said when they stepped on board was, "Would you all like a drink?" And he said, I immediately said, "We don't drink." And he said it was never brought up again. He was trying to tell us in a class that, you know, you need to simply know what you're going to do ahead of time, state it, and usually, he said, now, if I'd been a drinking man and I wouldn't drink with that fella, he probably would have got mad. But when I said, "We don't drink," he said that was the end of it. It wasn't brought up anymore. You know, and they both understood each other. But there are so many deceptions of alcohol and wine that, you know, it deceives you into thinking that once you pick it up, you can lay it aside easily. That's one of the greatest deceptions of alcohol. You know, it's sort of like, what was his name? The Indian who did all those commercials. Yeah, Iron Eyes Cody. His story about picking up the rattlesnake, putting it in under his coat, you know, to warm him up. When he put him down, he said, "That's the way alcohol does you." He said, "You know that it's dangerous when you pick it up. If you're not careful, it'll bite you before it's over." And we could all, I know, tell stories. My heart goes out to people because, I've had dear friends that were alcoholics. And I know the struggles that they have. And I've worked with some of them and talked with some of them, encouraged them, and so on, as I'm sure just about everybody here has. But it is very, very sad. Listen to Proverbs chapter 23. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contention? Who has babbling? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? They who tarry long at the wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. See, there's a new thing, a mixed wine. Look not upon the wine when it is red, when it gives its color in the cup, when it moves itself aright. At the last it bites like a serpent, stings like an adder. Your eyes shall behold strange women. Think of how many acts of adultery have been committed that involved alcohol. It's used to break down the inhibitions, to take away the restraints. and it certainly will loosen the tongue. Your heart will utter perverse things. You'll be like a man who's seasick. That's what he's describing here. He says, you shall be as he that lies down in the midst of the sea, or as he that lies upon the top of a mast. How many of you have ever been seasick? Anybody? James Richardson, I was talking one time about people who were homesick. He said, well, the three worst sicknesses that I ever had was I was homesick when I left home to go into World War II. He said, I got seasick. And he said, I was really sick with that. And there was one other. What would that have been? I can't remember now. But anyway, he said, it's difficult to know which one's worse, but when you got all of them at the same time, it's really bad. And I said, well, I guess you've got a point there. There were some of the guys trying to get Brother James to go hiking with them. And he said, boys, I did all the hiking I wanted to in World War II. And so I'm not going to go hiking with you. But this is a description of somebody who's out at sea. My nephew always wanted to go deep sea fishing. He said, Uncle Edward, I was so looking forward to that. It was Paul Reed. He went to Florida, and he said, we went out. Daddy took me out, and he said, we got out there, and I got so sick. And he said, I'd go down in the bay, or what do you call it, the belly of the boat anyway. He said, I'd lay down there, and I'd get to feeling a little better. I can do this. He said, the minute I hit that deck, he said, here I'd go again. Now, that's what this is talking about right here. And that's what alcohol is said to do to you. And he said, they have stricken me, shalt thou say, and I was not sick. What have they done to me, you know? They have beaten me. Feels like somebody that's been whipped and beaten. Now, you think about how many people, if they were truthful, would say, that is an accurate description of what I go through. I've had one or two over the years that have told me that's a good description of it. There's just a couple of others that I wanted to mention. Ecclesiastes 10. Ecclesiastes 10, and it is verse 17. I believe that's it. Yes. Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for strength and not for drunkenness. That's a little used passage. But when leaders are influenced by alcohol, we're going to have serious problems. It clouds their judgment, and they're not able to make wise decisions. In Isaiah 28, verse 7, but they also have erred through wine and through strong drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. It affects our vision. It affects our judgment. There's just so many evil things about it. In Habakkuk 2:15, woe to him that gives his neighbor strong drink. I don't think Jesus would have violated that principle. And that's the reason, the primary reason, one of the primary reasons that I don't believe that he made intoxicating wine. That's my view on that, and tried to show you from the Scriptures some things, but may we never forget that alcohol and beer and wine and whiskey and all hard liquors is a major problem in American society and even throughout the world. And I've always said, legalizing a vice will never make it a virtue. Don't care what you're talking about. legalizing a vice will not turn it into a virtue. I think that's a principle that we have forgotten largely. They call it the devil's brew for good reason, don't they? We appreciate your being here tonight. We'll study the cleansing of the temple next week, Lord willing. Hope you'll come prepared to study that with us and discuss it. Mary Jo's not here tonight.